So, folks, that was Aryan from the React Native side talking about Agora and how to implement voice calling in your apps. And with that, we are done with the speakers and the talks of for today. And now it's time for the main event. It is finally time to settle what is best in 2021, React Native or Flutter. I have been moderating this fight for so long now that I don't think I can do it alone anymore. So I want to call upon some help. And help is coming to me in the form of Shankudev Rai, who is going to help me moderate this debate today.
Hey,
Hi,
hi
Shankudev.
Digvijay. Hello,
Thank you
hello.
so
How
much
are
for
you?
coming
How
in
are
and
you?
helping me out.
Sure, sure. My pleasure. Been a while since I saw you last time.
Oh, yes, it has been. I think we met each
Yeah,
other virtually, of course, in the last meetup
last
itself,
meetup. Yeah, and the
when
one
you,
before that. So
and the one before that, and the one before
yes,
that.
I guess. So yeah,
It's
uh,
starting to appear like a pattern. I
yeah.
don't.
It's like
I
just
hope it
me and
doesn't.
you with some people coming on and off, and
Just
just
watching
me and you.
us. I know. I
Yeah,
hope this
yeah.
doesn't become a very bad habit.
I can you can look at the number of viewers. Like, are they going up or are they going down? If they are going up, then we might continue this.
Oh no, they are going up. We'll
Okay,
I think
okay.
we'll have to continue this for the greater good.
No,
You know,
yeah. No, we have to
it's all for
tolerate
the
each
greater good.
other. Then yeah,
Anyway, so
yeah.
Shankudeep is today's moderator, and he's going to be managing the panels and the panelists today. Um, as a short introduction for Shankudeep, of course, since all of you must have seen him here before, he is the engineering manager here at Geeky Ants, and he has been with Geeky Ants for a long time, and he has been a part of endless projects, and he has done numerous experiments. And there are so many things that I just think I'm going to let him tell you whatever he wants to tell you. And of course, I want to mention that he's a very, very huge football fan, to the extent that he always keeps FIFA 20 running next to his work desk. So whenever he gets a 5 minutes break, he quickly plays a match. I know, Shankadeep, I know you.
It's not 20 anymore. It's 21. So yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, I need to upgrade then, I suppose.
Yes, yes, you
All
do.
right, Shankadeep. So why
Yeah.
don't you join me in welcoming our panelists then?
Sure, sure, sure. Let's do that. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, first up on the Flutter team is Divyanshu Bhargava, the king of Flutter. There he is.
Hey guys, hey
Yep.
Digvijay, hey Chandru.
Uh,
Hello,
Hi,
Uh,
hello,
Divyanshu.
Divyanshu.
Been a
it
long
was,
Good
time.
morning.
yeah, it's been a long time. Uh,
Anyway, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Work from home,
Uh-huh.
pandemic time.
Yes,
So
it's the same story for everybody. Uh, so Divyanshu and I were having a small chat yesterday, and Divyanshu told me that he had been working remotely for a very, very long time, and that he's just very eager to get done with this pandemic and get back to working with people in a real office and
yeah,
talk to them while he's working rather than sitting in a room in his house. I think he's so motivated that he might just roll up his sleeves, set out, and create a vaccine on his own.
yeah. I'm more excited for physical meetups,
Uh-huh.
especially at Bangalore.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah. So let's see when we can have next physical meetup at Flutter
I think your
Bangalore.
last physical meetup was with us in Bangalore,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I hope that even my next will be with Flutter Bangalore.
Well, I hope that happens. Anyway, so I'm going to introduce your teammate today. We have the man himself who owns Google like he is a celebrity, because he is the creator of MobX, Mr. Pavan Podila. Welcome.
Hey guys, good to see you
Hello, hi.
again.
Guys and
Good to
girls,
see you.
we have been blessed with the presence of a celebrity. Uh, he is a senior
All celebrities do
director
that, right?
at How to Handle Fame.
No, I'm only as famous as you guys think I am.
So he's a senior director at Publicis Sapient. Still, yes, I can tell by the name. Um, and Pavan, recently I just googled your name, and I see that you have an entire page dedicated to you. I never knew that. That is brilliant.
Yeah, sometimes paying Google helps.
I see. I don't think you've paid Google. I think you're too humble for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he is the creator of Mobex, and he has written 2 books till date. And I think the last time you wrote a book on Mobex, you joined us in one of our physical meetups to talk about it as well,
Yeah.
and
Early
that was
2020.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yep, and it is absolutely wonderful and a pleasure to have you here today. And you, of
Yeah.
course, you and Divyanshu are going to be teaming up and defending Team Flutter.
Come on, Divyanshu. Dress on your shoulders now.
Let's do it. Like I think like Avengers had Hulk, we have Pavan.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving on, let's introduce Team React Native. Starting off, we have Nishan. There he is. You're on mute, Nishan.
Hello, I'm Nishan.
Hi,
Ah,
hi
yeah.
everyone.
Hey.
Hi, Nishan. Welcome to the panel. So Nishan has very recently joined us at Geeky Ants as a software engineer, and I think before that he's well, not before that, but currently he is also involved in mentoring a lot of companies. Because I went through your
Uh,
Twitter, and you are also building a pretty cool thing, which I will not spoil. I'll let you tell everybody about it.
yeah. So should I
Uh,
tell them now?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, 1 minute. Let me just share that.
Oh, are you sharing a screen right
Okay,
now?
so should I share it in the YouTube chat?
Yeah, you can do that, or you can just talk about it.
Yeah.
Everybody's listening to you.
Yeah. So as you guys know, we have CSS grids in web. So now we are planning to make that in React Native. So in the upcoming version of Native Base.
Native Base for Life competition, Flutter team.
Right?
I hope you guys are not intimidated.
Yeah.
If you're not, maybe you should be a little. Anyway, so Nishan, I'm going to introduce your teammate and your fellow panelist today, the final panelist to join us for today's discussion. This is Pranav Pandey.
Hi guys. Hi
Hi,
everybody.
Pranav.
Hi
Welcome.
everyone.
Yeah, hi.
So Pranav is just on the same level as Shankadeep right now. He has been with Geekians for a long time, and he is an expert in everything. And he has done so many things that I've lost count. And when I saw the things that he has done, I just did not feel like making a list because there was too much work. So I'm just probably going to let Pranav tell you whatever he wants to tell you about himself. But yes, Pranav, it's a pleasure to have you on the panel today.
Yeah, thanks. It's just JavaScript, that's all.
But what in JavaScript?
So Digvijay, he is the Ant-Man to Hulk that we have on the other side. So
Yes.
that might-
The only weakness.
yes.
Anyway, so to all the panelists, thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us here today. Shankadeep, as you and I already know, React Native and Flutter, both of these technologies have had major overhauls and so many new things that have come up in the recent times, with the newest version of Flutter to overhauling navigation in React. And of course, before I leave, I also want to mention, since I mentioned that we have started a new blog on Hashnote, Shankadeep tried his hand at AWS Amplify and Cognito and built a wonderful navigation for a very simple blog app, and it is all on that blog. So make sure you check it out. We are going to be releasing a video about it as well very, very soon. So Shankadeep, I think I'm going to give you the mantle. The baton is in your hands, and well, take it away.
Sure. Thanks.
And all
Thanks,
the best,
Digvijay.
everybody else. All the best, guys.
True.
Thank you, Digvijay. All the best to all of you. It's not a fight; it's a discussion. The marketing team wants to make it a fight, but it is not. We are just going to discuss about Flutter and React Native, what we did in 2020, what we are going to do in 2021. So the basics first. Let's just look at what React Native is and what Flutter is. React Native, created by Facebook, we all know, been there for a while. I think 2015 it was launched in, or maybe early 2016, somewhere around there. Flutter came a bit later, I think around 2017 or 2018. But yeah, both have been there for a while now. So I would ask someone from the Flutter team to come first and then just give a brief introduction of how they came to know about Flutter and how long they have been working on it. What do they like about it? So, any one of you, please come forward and then just take it away.
I'll let Divyanshu start off, and then we'll cover up with him.
Okay. So I'll first tell my story with Flutter. It was, I think, in 2017 when I was already a native Android developer, and then there was so many blogs being flooded up with Flutter. People were talking about Flutter, and I got intimidated about Flutter. And at that time, I was searching, should I go to Flutter or should I go to React Native? Because Flutter was very in early stage. And so I went up to I went and I just tried with Flutter. Then at that time, I was working in a startup in Bangalore. And so we thought, okay, let's do it. Let's try Flutter. And that's where my journey started. So we built our a native Android app and turned it into Flutter. And I think it was in mid 2018 at that time, and that's where my journey with Flutter started. And with the people who don't know, like I think Flutter came in. So I think first Flutter version was came in December 2018. In Google I/O, they released the first Flutter version, but the Dart language has been there for quite some time, since 2012. And although Dart came out to be, a successor of JavaScript, but it didn't did very well at that time. And then a very small team in Google, which is like AtMob's team. Although it's a very small team, but which makes the most revenue out of the Google, they were using Dart. And then there was a team which was building a framework called Sky. And then it's how like the Flutter journey started. So Flutter was previously codenamed as Sky, uh, and as someone has said, sky is the limit. So yeah, so then they changed it into Flutter later on, and then they used Dart to be in Flutter, and I think they are building it since then. And it's been a short but very wonderful journey for Flutter team, and how it has grown so fast so rapidly. So yeah, I think that was a small introduction from me.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll just share a small
yeah,
tidbit
Pavan.
about the way Flutter kind of originated. Long time back, in the Chrome team, Eric Seidel was working on the Chrome rendering engine, which was, I think, of course, called Skia at the time. And he noticed that Skia was becoming more and more complex over time because they had to support so many CSS standards, and there was a lot of legacy with CSS, which required creating a lot of if-elses and conditionals, and the rendering engine was becoming very complex. So he said, why don't we actually, simplify everything? Let's go with the best practices. Let's go with the latest standards. And what can we do in terms of, simplifying the rendering code? And when they did that, they realized that literally 50% of the code base could be thrown away, which was amazing. And Chrome was already multi-platform, right? The Skia could work on Linux, Mac, Windows, Raspberry Pi, a bunch of other things, and of course, mobile platforms as well. And so they said, why don't we just build a small framework using Skia as our primary rendering engine and create a application layer on top, which eventually became Flutter. And that was the original thought. And they first announced it, I think, in 2015 or 2016 at one of the Dart conferences. And I've been following it since a very long time, but I never really experimented with it. Only in 2018, once they went live, I thought I'll take a look at it. And then I saw that there were a few things missing, like state management, and I decided to kind of do something about it. And and that's my entry into Flutter. So I'm not an expert by any means, but I think I know a little bit, which is enough probably to be dangerous.
Yes, yes. Actually, a lot of us look at Flutter like it is new, but a lot of us don't know that how long it has been in the making. So, like Pavan rightly said, it has been there for a while. It's just been exposed a bit late, but then yeah, though it has been in the works for a while now. So yeah, someone from the React Native team, maybe Pranav or Nishan, what do you like about it? When did you start first with React Native? How do you feel? Has it made it easy for you? Or maybe just start one of you.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh, I'll go first, Nishan. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Sure.
So basically, while I was in college and during the initial years, I was not exposed to JavaScript as a language. We were more into object oriented, as we all have been probably in our colleges. So um, slowly after I joined here, then I started delving into JavaScript, and my first introduction was with React Native, directly into the deep end. So I was working with React Native after I joined for like 20 days, and then it's been uh, it's been pretty much React Native over the last 3.5 years, and lately I've been working with web a lot also. So now I'm viewing things a bit differently across platforms when I see it. But yeah, so it's been a while working with React Native, and I started with point 25 or 28, I think. Now we are at 61. So yeah, that's a pretty long journey. Yeah, that's
I think it's 63 now, if I checked. Maybe
3. Okay, yeah.
it's 63, right? Nishan knows. Yeah, Nishan is in
64 is
the
already out.
64 is already out. Oh, see, the Flutter
Yeah,
guys
they
know it that
release it
better
like
than us. Yeah.
there's a release candidate in every 2 weeks. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think it's a fortnightly release pattern that they follow. Yes, Nishan, anything from you? Like how I think you started pretty recently, but you have done some great work I've seen. So any insights, any what do you like, anything? And then I'll just go through the topics that we're going to cover so that we have some visibility. We're going to define React Native and Flutter, which we're doing now. Then we'll talk about the releases, which we'll just discuss what the current release is, what it offers right now that wasn't offered in the previous release, if at all there is something. Then we'll look at the creators, which are of course, and which is of course not a very big discussion. It's Facebook and Google, we know. And then we'll go into the details. But yeah, that is the pattern we're going to follow. So yeah, Nishan, you were saying.
Yeah, so I started with React Native like a year ago. So I was in my company. I was a web developer. So like even right now I'm a web developer. So back then, like we had one requirement like to build a prototype of a simple app which had like 2 to 3 screens. So I started exploring React Native, and like since I already had a web developer background, it was like very easy for me to get into React Native. Like by a day or two, I was able to like build the entire thing. So yeah, that's how I started. I used Expo back then, and so yeah, I mean the React React is basically you have to learn it once and you can write anywhere. So that's what they preach. So yeah, I felt that it's true to some extent, and yeah, I was able to get started with it like pretty quickly. So
Okay, great. I think that same holds true for Flutter as well. Now we have Flutter Web, which is at a very advanced, at a very stable stage also. I think Flutter Desktop as well, if I'm not wrong. So I think the learn once, use everywhere logic can be applied both ways. So anyway, speaking of releases, React Native, like we heard, is 63 or 64. I think Flutter is already gone to stable. I think it's 1.21 or 22. Any one of you?
Yeah, it's 1.22 currently.
It's 1.22 currently. So why do you think that Flutter, even after being released, after React Native has gone into stable, although React Native being earlier should have gone first? So Pavan or Divyanshu, why do you think that's the case? Do you think it is more evolved, or do you think it is stable? It can be used in production. Of course, both of them are being used in production apps. But why do you think that has gone into stable earlier, like than React Native? What do you think that makes it?
Well, it's really hard to say why they have Google team have thought of making it to stable before React Native. Uh, I think because I think both of them are pretty stable for the production apps, and we have seen apps from both of the platforms who are in the production and working pretty great. So yeah, like maybe Pawan can tell Pawan why is they have to stable first.
So I don't think there is any fixed answer for defining stability, right? It's in the mindset of Google and Facebook to say when a framework is mature enough to be released for production usage. And I think the numbering is little unfortunate, I would say. A 0 point release, makes you feel that it's not ready yet, but even though people are literally building their livelihoods on React Native, right? So it is stable. I mean, it's not going to collapse anytime soon. But at the same time, Flutter is also like very low in its numbers. Like 1.22 feels low. It should have been somewhere like 4.5, 5.5 or something, right? But I think it depends on how you define those releases, and I think organizations define it differently. But I think what stability means to all of us is we can build apps and ship it, and people are not complaining that it's crashing on launch, right? So I think that's stability for us.
Yes, I think going from version X to version Y should not, you shouldn't be pulling your hair out. So that is what we say when we mean stability. So I think that's what we're trying to achieve. I think both of them, even React Native earlier, I remember upgrading was a pain, but I think right now it is a lot more easier. I think we can upgrade without having to change the entire pods, having to reinstall pods and doing everything. So I guess that's easier. But Flutter, I believe there are no such issues. You can just upgrade seamlessly between versions. So that's something about Flutter. So Pranav, you're
Yeah, I
saying
think
something?
Change now though. Once you move to the Dart 2.12 update, when Flutter
Okay.
1.24 comes out, there's a huge change in the language runtime, which is something called as non-nullable by default. I won't get into all those basics details right now, but it essentially means there's a fundamental language change which requires everything to change ground up, because they've introduced the idea of nullability as a core feature of a type, right? So types by default could accept null as a value in addition to their actual values, but now they can't anymore. So which means the whole definition of a type has changed ground up. So there'll be a huge upgrade cost, not a huge one, but it's enough of an upgrade cost to kind of pull your hair out possibly. But
Yes.
it will happen when they release 1.24, and they are trying to smoothen that migration right now.
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I just saw your tweet on Mobex that you are
Yes, I just released a
migrating it.
I just released a pre-release of the null safety feature. I had to solve 550 plus issues. It was interesting. Just for a library. So I can imagine an application which deals with other
All
libraries.
right.
What kind of library it would be?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when do you think it's going to come out? Like, do we have a date or
Next year, early next
next
year
year?
sometime. Yeah. So now
Okay.
what they're
Okay.
doing is they're requesting all the library authors to go and update their own packages, and publish it as a pre-release with the null safety suffix. And once we have enough of that ecosystem already upgraded, then I think we can ask the application owners to kind of start migrating to Dart and Flutter 2. Sorry, the next version of Dart.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. So Pranav, what has been your experience upgrading React Native? You don't look very happy, but yeah, what has it been so far?
Yeah. So when it comes to React Native, right? So I think the last major breaking update, as we should say, breaking update was probably 59 to 60. One of the reasons why I feel React Native has still not gone to one point, right, is that there are still things that they're working on the architecture. Like they're still not comfortable totally, I feel, with the structure that they have. And there was this huge noise around it when hooks was being released that, okay, maybe this is the 1.0 that we've been waiting for. But uh, that was not the case. And still, I think React Native is moving towards a more functional approach than it was before when it started out. And I think that is the norm that it is going to set. So we don't know for sure when 1.0 is going to be out, but I'm pretty sure we are closer to it than we are far from it right now.
Yeah. Also, I don't think we'll ever go to 1.0. I think it will be more similar to what happened with React. There were
Hmm.
0.14 or 13, I guess, and then there were 15 suddenly. So
Correct.
don't be surprised if from 0.63 we go to 65.1 or something like that. So that's also something which might happen. So, like you said, it's closer to it than not being. Also, I think they're moving to a new engine. I think it's called Hermes. We already have it for Android. They're also moving it out for iOS very soon, if not already. So, yeah, that's also something which we'll keep an eye on, I guess. Nishan, you had something to say?
Yeah, also this new architecture thing. So, I mean, they are re-architecting the entire thing, how underneath React Native works. So I'm not sure, like, if, I mean, this will also affect versioning at some point. So yeah, we'll have to see.
Okay, I
think
just read. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think taking it to version 1.0 is also, I think it's a good marketing strategy. Because as far as I remember, when Flutter was in beta, and then they took it into stable as 1.0, I've seen lots and lots of startups trying out Flutter because Google said that it's in stable and it's in production ready. So I think that might be one more reason to get more and more user. So yeah.
Yeah. So Flutter had a recent spike in stars where it just overtook React Native. So was it around that time when they released 1.x, or was
It
it
was after
before that?
that. It was after
After
that.
that.
Yeah,
All right.
after, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, yeah. So we have a comment here saying React Native is trash. I so yeah, he's probably not very happy. Had some issue installing the simulator is what I'm guessing, but yeah, we'll let that slide anyway. So we'll look at the languages that are being used in React Native and Flutter, as we know, we have spoken about it, we have used Dart. So Dart, as far as my knowledge goes, Dart is more similar to TypeScript than it is to React Native, right?
Not really.
Anyone? Not really, is it? Okay, let's just have a discussion about Dart first. Maybe Pavan or Divyanshu, one of you can pick it up, and then we'll go to look at React Native. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just share my quick view of Dart as a language. And this is more to do with static versus dynamic languages, not specifically Dart versus JavaScript. If you look at any static language, there is a lot of knowledge baked into the syntax of the language itself, which allows the compiler to optimize things at a much deeper level than what you could do with a dynamic language, because that knowledge is not available to the interpreter, right? Or the language itself is not transformed in any way which makes it closer to the machine language. With dynamic languages, you have the problem, right? Because until late in the game, when you're actually executing the code, is when you start, optimizing things and then putting it into hot caches and creating a machine code version of it. It might be too late, and that cost of doing that extra transformation at runtime can be a severe performance hit in 60 frames per second execution environments like UI, right, which requires you to be very fast. Now, Dart is a static language, so which means there's a lot of compile time optimizations done. So by the time it executes on your hardware, on your architecture, it's already very fast. And at sometimes it can be even faster than the native C and C++ versions, just because the optimizations have been baked in. And additionally, the language itself has certain constructs built in, so that code which has to be tested with specific nulls and other kinds of things, which you have to write unit tests for, are not required in the language, because the language itself takes care of that for you, right? So there's no this guarantee given by the compiler that you never really expect a null coming in, because you have defined that a type cannot accept null, right? So something like that. So TypeScript is giving you that benefit, but TypeScript doesn't guarantee at runtime that nobody's passing null to you. If you have a third party calling your code, they can freely pass in null and you'll still fail, right? Whereas in Dart, a third party itself can never call and pass null to you, because even that code is compiled with Dart, right? So they're not compiling with JavaScript as we do with React Native code. So there is a there's a boundary around which you can draw safety lines, and there's a boundary around which you have to expect unsafe code to come in, and so you have to put in your own extra guidelines around it. With Dart, you don't need that extra layer of code, which also improves performance, right? So I would think of it as static versus dynamic, not specifically Dart versus JavaScript.
Yeah, I guess that's a more realistic comparison. Anyone from the React Native side, anything you have to say about TypeScript? How, like, if you have used JavaScript and you have used TypeScript to create an app, any differences? Do you prefer one over the other, if at all you do?
So you want to say, Pranav, something?
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So TypeScript, I mean, yeah, it's just like a superset syntactically to JavaScript. I mean, it's not providing you the runtime thing, which Pavan just told. But I mean, it's still very much helpful, because like, let's say you are doing an API call, and API is itself returning a null. There's nothing you can do with the Dart also, right? I mean, you will get the same error. So I mean, yeah, syntactic thing is really helpful with TypeScript. So like, I've been using TypeScript, like I have made it a default for all for all the JavaScript projects that I've been building. So yeah, that's it from mine.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think after the introduction of TypeScript, right? Before TypeScript, we did have a lot of issues with React Native. Moving forward, we used to have a lot of checks. We still do, but I mean, TypeScript has introduced a type safe system, a set of boundaries which are not as rigid, obviously, as a type system totally, but it is good enough to move forward, I feel. The changes that TypeScript has introduced. And also, I think the introduction of TypeScript has put some focus to the JavaScript side. So, irrespective of you using TypeScript or not, right? Uh, there has been a change. I have seen that with the developer as well as with people in the framework, that they are now putting some effort into it, which is always good to see. Uh, so yeah, I think, yeah, obviously in that matter, it's not as safe as we say Dart is, but we have a lot of things to explore. So for example, ReasonML is a very type safe language, right? And we have Reason React, which is another binding on top of it. So the point is that yes, there it's not as safe, but then there are multiple alternatives that we have with React Native and React in general. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. So yeah, we'll move on quickly to the next topic which we have to cover. That is the declarative approach for creating UI, which I guess both the frameworks are following, as in a very similar approach. I guess React did it first. React Native was an adaptation of it, and then Flutter, if I might say, is inspired by it. So, a question to both of you, all the panelists here, like, how do you find this declarative approach of creating UI? As in, you tell the UI that this is what you want. You do not worry about how they do it. So, how easy, or how, like, do you think you miss certain level of control over your components, or do you think what you have right now is enough? So, any one of you, if you can just elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, so declarative code is what gets a developer closer to a consumer. And what I mean by that is, when you use an app like say Uber or Swiggy or other apps in other countries, what you're really doing is you're not telling them how to do things, right? But what you really want. You are paying for something and you just expect it to be delivered at home. Now that's a consumer experience. Whereas as a developer, you are really battling with all the hows of how to make the consumer intent possible, right? By stitching together services and connecting different systems, and then talking to delivery guys, then finally delivering something at home. When you talk about declarative code, it is kind of building a experience where the developer is now getting closer to consumers. There will hopefully be a time, sometime in the future, where developers also will be living the life of a real consumer and building experiences in their apps, which is very close to what a consumer sees. Rather than writing code all the time, we are just kind of packaging things together, assembling things together, right? So declarative code is like being a consumer who always states the intent but doesn't care about how it's actually getting done. And irrespective of React Native or Flutter, I think we all as developers benefit a lot by having declarative programming frameworks, right? Because it just makes our life easy. I don't have to care about memory management and how to stitch pixels and push things on the GPU and all that. I just tell them I want a fast 60 frames per second experience. This is what I need to do, and let the framework figure out and pull its hair out and other pixels out and put it on the screen, right? So I think it's a win-win for us as developers to have a declarative framework. So both React Native and Flutter have it. So I think we all should be happy about it.
Yeah, even I
Yeah, I
think
guess so. I think
native,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, even I think native SDKs are also trying to move into declarative UI approach. So I think Android
Yeah.
already has it. I'm not sure about Swift. I think Swift has Swift UI, which is also a
Yeah,
declarative.
Swift UI is declarative. Yeah, it's actually very
I
good.
think everyone has
Intuitive.
declarative UI. So yeah.
And I think as a compiler, if you are a compiler creating and looking at a UI tree, there's a lot of optimization you can do as well for a declarative code versus a non-declarative code, right? Because in non-declarative code, you don't know what the developer is actually building. Whereas in a declarative code, it's very clear what the UI tree should look like. right? So you can actually prune things, you can combine things, and you can optimize things at different layers, and that's what actually the Chrome Skia engine does. And I'm sure the same is happening at the React Native layer also, with reconciliation and compressing of trees and doing all those kind of things. So there's a benefit on the development side, on the framework side also.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so.
I think declarative UI makes a lot of sense. Like irrespective of the language that we approach, it's just the approach of it, the way we approach it. So this is something that we want, and not, instead of delving into how we should approach it or how we should do it, we just say, okay, this is what we want. This is the variable components that we need. Whatever whatever we have as a state or something, whatever we have there, just display it to my my UI component, whatever I have declared. So that makes a lot of sense from a normal programming view, irrespective of the language, I feel. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, I think we could go on and on, but we have a time limit to adhere to, so I guess we have to skim through some of the topics that we have. Also, chat is going off, so we'll look at those answers later. I also would ask chat to keep the comments related to the topic on hand and not move away from what we are trying to do here. It's a discussion. It's not React Native trying to beat Flutter or the other way around. I'm wearing a Flutter t-shirt, but I'm a React Native dev at heart, so let's keep it that way. So yeah, what is the next thing that we're looking at? The architecture, right? So we have discussed this Kia architecture already, but again, let's do it. Maybe one of you can, then we'll go over the React Native architecture, but the Flutter architecture first. Any one of you?
The one you want to take up?
Yeah, you can go, please.
So I'll keep it very short. I think we want to cover more questions also. So the architecture of Flutter, I think most of you must have seen it already. There is at a very lowest level, you have the C and C++ engine. And then on top of that, you have your runtimes created using Dart as a framework, right? So the runtime engine is actually very small, and that's the one which is actually doing most of the work. And everything about that is Dart. So there's a big Dart layer in the Flutter engine, which is actually doing the work, which is huge because your code can now be written at a much higher abstraction level than focusing more on the low level details. And also the application code is Dart, right? So the same benefits that the runtime gets, you also get. And ultimately, everything is compiled down to native bits. So there's a huge benefit over there as well, because there's no cost at runtime to transpile things and converting things into machine code and all those kind of things. But it also means that you have separate builds for separate architectures, right? So if you're publishing a Flutter app, you have to create 3 or 4 different builds. If you're publishing a web build, it's a different one. The desktop build will be different because we'll have one for Linux, Mac, and Windows, and then of course iOS and Android will have its own build. So there will be separate builds for different architectures, but it's all the same code base. And that's what I think write once, run everywhere really means, right? So you just writing the same code and not really doing architecture specific tweaking and build, right? So that's the benefit you get.
Yes, yes, I guess so. That makes sense. So anything from the React Native side as to how the architecture is? I think with the new, I think Nishan spoke about it earlier, about the Hermes engine that we have. So anything else from your side? Yeah, go ahead.
So the current architecture, how it works is that you have this JS thread where you write all your React components. And so when the app runs, all this, whenever a UI is generated, first from this JS thread, this view things are serialized and they are sent to the UI thread. And UI thread communicates with one more thread, which uses Yoga layout engine, where all the styles, we are writing UI using flex property. We are building the layout using flex property. So that needs to be converted into platform specific calculations. So that thing is done by this Yoga layout. So the UI thread talks to that Yoga layout, and after that the UI is rendered. So that's how the current architecture is. But the new architecture on which React team is working on, so there they will be removing this bridge itself. So there won't be any serialization, and all our JavaScript code will have direct access to the native modules using using a thing called JSI. I don't know much in detail. I'm still like
Yeah.
reading about it. So using that, I mean the React Native application, it will work similar to web apps. So in browser we have access, we have direct access to all the components using in a synchronous way. But in React Native currently it's not possible. So that will be solved in the new architecture. So yeah, so it's still in development. Yeah.
Okay, okay, sounds good, sounds good. Also, I think a basic difference between these two frameworks is that React Native renders to OEM native widgets on the phone that we see, whereas Flutter draws it over a canvas, if I may call it. So, but I don't think it has any performance implication as such, because we've had apps in Flutter which perform better than React Native. So I don't think we can hold that against Flutter anymore. Yeah, Divyanshu,
Yeah,
you're
so this
saying
is the
something?
exact reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the exact reason because Flutter is drawing it on every widget on canvas using the Skia engine. You can get a really good performance. You can get 60 FPS, and even it can go up to 120 FPS depending upon the phone you are using. So yeah, like performance is really good. It's as we say, it's like a native like performance is there.
Correct. I think the fact that you mentioned about falling back to OEM widgets, right? That is something that is more related to on the branding side of it. So, for example, if you want your application to look exactly the same, right? Flutter. Obviously, since it draws over a canvas, it gives you more options regarding that. While if React Native is there, it falls over your OEM. So in iOS, it's going to use the main iOS components instead of how you exactly want it to look. So if you want something to look pinpoint exact as it is across platforms, whether the user is using a uh, Android, iOS, or Mac or
Device, yeah.
something, then it makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think also Flutter comes inbuilt with this very nice material UI library where you can just use it out of the box. So you use it on an iPhone or on an Android device, you get those beautiful ripples when you click on buttons. But for
Yeah,
React Native, if you have a button and you click on it on an iOS, you don't get that ripple, but on Android you do. I think it's called touchable native feedback. So yeah, that's a difference that we have. But I think in React Native we have libraries which take care of it. There's an entire section on libraries that we'll come to, but yeah, that's a difference, if we might call it. So we have setup and project configuration. So I think this is a pretty basic thing. I don't think any of us have had issues setting up either React Native or Flutter. Maybe for iOS development, we might have had to use a Mac system because it's got nothing to do with a Flutter or React Native. That's how the ecosystem is. But then, yeah, that's something which we can talk about maybe at a later call. Then we have UI components and development API. So as it says, RN has a lot of third-party libraries which we can use. We can pick and choose what we want. We have choices. But for Flutter, we do not, which one might argue is a good thing. So which might not be as well. So now I'd like to hear first from the React Native side as to how do you look at it. And when I speak about libraries, I just don't mean about UI libraries. There are times you can have state management libraries. You have different options for state management, for UI, and a lot. So how does it affect your decision? And do you think it's a good thing, or you'd rather have a centralized system like how Google systems usually do? We have Angular, we have Flutter. They have their own inbuilt system which you stick to. Facebook, on the other hand, is a bit more open. So yeah, you speak. I just listen. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, on the library side, I think the problem that we have a lot of it is it's not a problem. It's a choice that we have currently, which is a good thing that we have a lot of choices, both as in the UI, using the UI components as well as using in the state management. So, first of all, when we start with UI, right? So, we've got a bunch of nice libraries that we can use out of the box if we want to. using Material UI and stuff like that. But on that, you also have the option of creating your own small system for your project if you want to. There's nothing stopping you from that. You can just go ahead and design everything from scratch, keep it for yourself, or not use a library or use some. When we come to state management, uh, we all know we've been having this for a long time. We've had Redux for a long time. Then we've had Mobergs. Then we have MST implementation out there. So I think we have a lot of things on the state management, and now we have obviously context, which is kind of replacing all of them. So considering all these options that we have, I think it's not a problem of plenty ever. It's just a matter of choice regarding this. So sometimes you do need a global centralized system, whereas in context has been projected as something like that, something that we can use as global, and which is true, which we can. But on my usage part, I still prefer going for a strong centralized system, like a lightweight Redux or something. Or if I'm fine with the Mobergs, I can use Mobergs, but I have a slight preference towards Redux. So I use a very lightweight version of it though. So I try to keep my calls out of it. I just keep a general state, and all the other states will be handled in components. That is how I approach my projects. So yeah, I don't think it's a problem of plenty. It's a blessing, if anything. Yeah.
Yes, I think that was I think that made sense. Anyone from the Flutter side?
Yeah. Um, so, like as you have already said, Flutter has its own toolkit for UI, and library. Like so, for Flutter has material widgets and Cupertino widgets both. And the really good thing about it is, for example, if you have some widget like maybe a list view or an app bar, so it will behave in Android. It will behave in Android device as it's the Android widget. So like list view will look like the native list view which you see in Android, and in iOS it will look like the widgets you see in native iOS. For example, if an app bar is there in Android, the title in the app bar is on the left, whereas on iOS you see it in the middle. So you don't have to maintain those things, specify those things specifically. It already does that. So we already have material and Cupertino widgets, and then apart from that, we have lots and lots of tons of library for state management. If you go and see, we have blog, we have Mobags, we have even I think these days some Gatic is getting a little popular, and although it's a little controversial too. And so yeah, so my personal favorite has been Mobex quite a lot. So there's another package called Flutter Modular. So I am really a fan of using Flutter Modular and Mobex together. So like I think it works like a charm for me. So yeah, like Pawan, you wanna add anything else?
Yeah, I think what Flutter has done is basically removed the variability of the rendering layer, right? When you look at React Native, you have to rely on the architecture or the platform to do the actual drawing. Whereas if you remove that variability, then you get a lot of standardization that as a developer you can focus on and expect that it will be drawn exactly the same in both the platforms or any other platform you deploy to. And that's exactly the experience you have on the web, right? If you look at evergreen browsers, you can be confident that whatever code you write using evergreen JavaScript features and CSS features, that all the browsers that support it will just work. There is no special handling that required. There is no CSS hacks or JavaScript hacks or any polyfills that need to apply and things like that, right? So to me, that's what Flutter has done to the rendering layer, which is basically eliminate the notion of polyfills and application or platform specific nuances, which you as a developer had to worry a lot on before, right? So now you have the benefit of drawing once and expecting it to work exactly the way you want it to work on all the platforms that support it.
Yes, yes, I think that's a very valid point. So I think to summarize it, if I might, I think both works if it depends on like what you are looking for in your app. I don't think you can go wrong with either. So I think these are like pros if you want to, or cons if you want to look at it the other way. But having too many options is at times a good thing. But yeah, sometimes you like, I think there was a word for it. It was called JS fatigue. I don't see it flying around too often right away, but yeah, you had just too many options to choose from. So I don't think we have anything called Dart fatigue as of yet. So that's that's a good thing that we have for Flutter, I guess. So yeah, moving on, we have to talk about the community support that we have for both. Like Nitish said in his talk, a lot of new students are leaning more towards Flutter than towards React Native. um, I'm not sure if it's because uh, some GDs are given star status, like he implied, but that very well might be a reason. React Native, not so much. I think React Native is more for people who have been with the web background for a while and then want to do something with the mobile app. I think they are the people who want to do more of React Native. But yeah, what are your thoughts on them? Nishan, maybe you are new, so you will be the perfect person to answer this. So why did you
Uh,
choose this React plus React Native path rather than Flutter?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, that I started as a React developer, so it was React Native seems like a natural choice for me, and also started learning a little bit Flutter like way long ago. But then I felt that I mean I can do like all the things in React Native, right? So I can skip Flutter for now because I already know one mobile platform. So maybe I will pick it up later. I'll still pick it up in future. So yeah, I mean, I didn't find any limitations with React Native. I mean, I can do all the things in React Native.
Nishan, I think we lost you there. Okay, while Nishan joins. So we had, I was looking at the comments in the YouTube section. So some people were saying the Flutter community is toxic. So I don't believe that. But then yeah, there was also someone who said React Native is trash. So yeah, but Pavan, Divyanshu, do you think that Flutter community is toxic by any chance?
I think, see, everyone's perception of a community is based on their exposure to the people with whom they interact, right? It's like you say the company is bad because my manager is bad, right? So it's
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
it's a perception, right? What is your initial interaction with the community? If you obviously met the bad apples, then obviously you think the whole set is bad. So I would actually, probably, try different people in the community if you had a bad experience to see if you continue to have such experiences with others. And most likely you will not because you have probably encountered a bad apple, right? So in general, I think most communities, including React Native, Flutter, React, Angular, Vue, the community in general is huge, right? It's running into hundreds of thousands of developers worldwide, and not everyone is bad. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a community, right? So communities are good from both sides. I wouldn't say there will always be pockets of people who will obviously downplay one over the other and value experience with one framework over the other, and trying to create some kind of a flame war. But just be cautious that that is happening and then stay away from it. So I think that's the only advice I would give. I think community is fantastic. People who are working to make these platforms better are, honestly doing a great job, and they are putting a lot of hard work. And with few people talking trash about these things, doesn't change that, right? They'll continue building those platforms. So just be optimistic that things are going to improve, and one bad person cannot change the entire outlook of the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Divyanshu, I see you smiling. Do you have anything to say there?
No, I was smiling because Pawan put it really well, and I think it's correct. Like if you think the community, so Flutter community is divided into lots of small community, and combined them they are building a really big community. So even I'm one of the organizers in Flutter India community, and even Flutter India community has lots of different Flutter meetups. Like Flutter Bangalore is there, Flutter Gwalior, Flutter Ahmedabad, and lots of there. So if you think like yeah, you are in the like as Pawan said, if you are with some bad apples, yeah, just change the apples. I think, yeah,
That's a good way to put it.
Try oranges maybe.
yeah. Try oranges maybe.
So, React Native team, any such complaints from your side? How do you see the community? Are they nice? Are they toxic? Do they
Not
reply to issues at all?
not at all, because simply because of one thing, all my answers, all my issues have been answered through GitHub issues. Okay, so the
Okay.
first thing is that I don't find my solutions anywhere else apart from GitHub. So the fact that the conversation is going on the actual framework and on the actual library, and it's always ongoing, is it's a very bright thing for a framework, any framework, for example. So uh,
Yeah.
that's a very nice thing that we have. Yeah.
So Pranav, if
Also,
you're finding on
yes,
sorry,
sorry.
if Pranav is finding all these answers on GitHub issues. I think the solution is an issue then.
The solution itself is the issue. So when we raise issues in the repositories, people reply with all their different solutions, and then one of them eventually work out. So that's how it happens. Also, when
It,
we speak
it's a good
about, yeah,
understanding also, I think.
yeah. When we speak about
So
toxic communities, I think a lot of us refer to, sorry, I'll just finish. So a lot of us refer to
yeah,
open source contributions that we use. We are stuck with something, and then we ask the library author for some help. Maybe he does not reply, he replies late, or he does not help at all. And then we say, okay, that library is trash, he does not help us. But then what we also need to realize is that that person has an actual day job, he's doing something, and then maintaining is this, like, as his maybe hobby, or maybe during his weekend hours, or whatever it is. So that's not his main job to keep you happy, to fix your issues. You can always fork it and then fix it if that's something which you want urgently. So just because if you're using something and you don't get instant support, you brand it as trash, I think that's also not called for. But yeah, I guess we all have those days when we need something urgently and it doesn't work. You say, oh, I wish I'd chosen the other stuff. So yeah, that always happens. Divyanshu, you were saying something.
yeah. So I was saying that one of the reasons why Flutter has grown really well in initial days is its community. And I don't know why people said it, but Flutter is one of the good communities I've seen. If you go and see Stack Overflow, there are so many people helping in Stack Overflow, giving the answers. So I think I have one graph right now in which shows that in 2019, the number of question answers, so Stack Overflow questions that month has surpassed the React Native questions in Stack Overflow. So because like as Pranav said, he get all of his answers from GitHub issues. I get all of my answers from Stack Overflow issues, and people and the whole community has been really helpful, even on Stack Overflow or in GitHub. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we are trying to say. So there are no toxic communities, there are toxic people, and they are in every community. So if you came across someone, you're just unlucky. So anyways, I think we've had a pretty long discussion. We can go on and on, but eventually we have other stuff to do as well. It's a weekend. So to summarize, I'll say, I'll ask this question to the React Native team first. Why? What would you use in 2021? Which I know what your answer will be, but and why would you use it? And do you see what are you looking forward to in 2021? And would you consider using Flutter? I'll ask the same question to Flutter as well. So what would you use in 2021, and would you consider switching to React Native? If yes, why? If no, why? So like a brief summary from all of you, and I want answers from all the four of you for this one. So anyone who wants to start first. So we'll do it like this: React Native, Flutter, then someone from React Native again, and someone from Flutter again. So that we have the balance going. Yeah. So should I pick the names first? Yeah, to avoid confusion. So I'll start with Nishan. Nishan hasn't spoken for a while, so Nishan.
Yeah, so for 2021, I'm looking to stay React Native developer. I'm not going to like keep it aside because I really enjoy it and I love React. So I'll be obviously looking. Yeah, I'm also very excited about the new architecture to see what are the performance gains we will be getting. So yeah, I'll be keeping React Native, and I will also start exploring Flutter and see like what are the differences and like what are some architecture patterns which we can use from, or I mean what are the inspiring patterns which we can no built libraries or some things in React Native. So I'll be exploring Flutter for sure. Yeah.
Great, great. So, Pavan, what are your thoughts and what are you looking forward to?
So I'll probably embed Flutter in a React Native app and try that,
I think
which you can do by the way. It's technically
it
possible.
is.
So you can create a view controller and then embed it inside a React Native app. But yeah, I think I'm definitely having a positive outlook for Flutter because there's a lot of changes under the hood with the language, with the runtimes, and in terms of widgets and support for newer platform versions like iOS 14 and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. So obviously, 2021 will obviously be a stable state for all of those features that are brewing right now. Separately, I think I'll also try other languages also. Now, what has happened in the past 10 years is that the programming language community has improved drastically, right? I mean, we have newer languages like Rust and Go, and we had TypeScript which came out, and then we have Dart and Kotlin and Swift. All these languages, I think, are kind of moving towards more of a statically typed language, right? And that seems to be the trend even for UIs, which primarily used to be dynamic languages. So I would keep my eye on more static languages like Kotlin, like Swift, and and see how I can learn from those languages and bring them back into, let's say, Flutter or even JavaScript. um, I'm hoping one day TypeScript becomes like a true first class citizen, like the way they've done it in Dino, maybe. And the language itself is not just a compiled version, but sorry, a transpiled version, but actually a runtime which also keeps those same type settings and all that. So I'm hopeful a lot of new stuff will be coming up, but I'm also positive about what's happening in the Flutter community.
Great, great. That was great to hear. So yeah, it's always good when you look at different languages and try to learn from them and then use it in like what you like best. So that makes it even better. So yeah, Pranav, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so currently I'm going to stay on React Native. Also, the fact that I've been working on web a lot recently, so I've kind of changed stacks totally. So I have been focusing a lot on web and looking at progressive web apps and how we can have something that's more friendly. But I think the fact the recent surge in development that we have with Flutter is it can only be good for React Native, even if it gets used less. Even in that fact, it is going to introduce changes like the ones that we're talking about, the ones that we have. So these changes are going to be introduced when we have alternating options for it, right? So since Flutter was so fast, they decided to okay, that maybe we need to do away with the bridge. Can we do away with the bridge? Is it possible? So they had a discussion like let's go for it. So I think it only bodes well for React Native as well, and I'm actually excited to see what the next development is. I was really happy with the functional changes, not initially because it wanted a change of mind shift kind of, but I was very happy with the functional changes that React Native has done recently, and we hope it goes on.
We all do, you all do. So Divyanshu, last word from you then.
Yeah. So although I'm also interested on React Native side, but I'll definitely go with Flutter. And because in 2021 there are lots of new cool things coming out of Flutter. Like I think one is sound null safety, which Pavan has already talked about. Like it's already there in beta, but stable will be in the initial, like in the first quarter of next year. And once the sound null safety is out, your code will be more optimized. And of course, you will have very less errors, runtime errors. So that's the one thing I'm really excited about. And Flutter is doing really great for me. I've already published, I think, quite a few apps on production with Flutter, and they all work really great. And yeah, plus I want to try with different things on Flutter. So I think I've been trying Flutter to run on Raspberry Pi. uh, which and I'm also excited for making desktop apps with Flutter. Hopefully, if they can come on stable by next year, that will be great too. But yeah, Flutter always.
Okay. So we have the React Native devs opting for React Native and the Flutter devs opting for Flutter. I'm surprised. I didn't expect this, but yeah, let's take this. Anyways, like I remember we had this discussion a couple of years ago, and at the end of that discussion, there was no clear answer as to which one was better. And I don't think we are any more smarter now. We still don't have an answer. So I guess we are going to use both in 2021. And Q Digvijay, I think the world needs you now. After a lot of Flutter and React Native discussion, we need Digvijay back, and here he is.
Guys,
Yeah.
guys, the comment section is wild. I mean, I've been listening to you guys talk, and I've been reading the comments, and the comment section is wild. People are so passionate about the technologies that they love. And also, what's really interesting about this is that people are asking questions in the comment section, and then there are people who are answering those questions for them. And it is so great to see how people collaborate over technology and can help. Since we were talking about toxicity, I think it is these moments that kind of nullify the little percentage of toxicity that we have everywhere, and this is what makes it all so great. um on that note, I guess, Shankadeep, you have done a brilliant job, and I am so glad that this was all recorded and online, because I think the amount of information that has been shared in this past hour, if we were sitting probably and talking about this, I do not know how much I would have been able to retain, honestly, because there's so much, and all of it all of it is so important. Shankadeep, you've done a brilliant job of managing this panel. Thank you so much for that. And of
Thank
course,
you.
to
Thanks
our
to all the panelists. I think it's up to them for giving me such intelligent answers. So it's more to them. So let's clap, all the six of us, for us. I guess so. That's the thing
yes,
with virtual meetups. We don't hear claps anymore.
yes, panelists, everybody, Divyanshu, Pavan, Pranav, Nishan, thank you so much for talking to us and sharing everything, and sharing such intelligence into this discussion. Um, so I guess, did we get an answer, or are we still on the same stance that we were a couple of years back when all of these were introduced? That depends.
We are not going to get an answer,
We're
Digvijay.
not
We
never
can
going to
all
get an
just
answer,
say
right? I
we
think.
wait every year and we'll still end it
I
on the same note. So yeah,
Yeah, I think we're going to grow gray hair and still be talking about which is better,
yes,
Flutter, React Native, or
yes.
some other random technology that might have been introduced by then, flying cars or self-driving cars, or I don't know,
And then the
miniature
question
planes.
would be what tech to use inside the car console. Would it be React Native or would it be Flutter?
It's how often you want to crash.
Depends. Depends. Yeah.
This
You
is
want to
this is
crash
brilliant.
at compile time or at runtime?
I think crashing at runtime would be
That's
better,
great.
so that I'm still on land and I can jump out and save myself rather than crashing midway.
You're very
No,
optimistic.
You got to prepare for the worst. You should
You
always
trust
prepare
software
for
too much.
Anyway, so thank you so much for everything, guys. Before we wrap up, I just want to have all our speakers on the screen as well. So do we have them here? Aryan, Nitish?
I
Um,
think the virtual selfie, as we call it.
yes, the virtual selves, of course. Aryan is here.
yeah.
Nitish is here as well. This is so great. Before we officially wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, this is the lineup for today's meetup, and you heard them speak, and they talked about everything that they love about Flutter and React Native, and discussed every single nook and cranny. And to all the viewers who are watching, I think you must have got a lot of your questions answered, whether to try React Native or Flutter or make a move according to your requirements or however it is. And I want to personally thank everybody on the screen right now for making this event such a memorable one. I think this is probably the last event, the last React Native and Flutter event that we'll be having this year, but definitely not the last event overall that we do. So a big round of applause for all of you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And before we close this session, I also want to give a very quick shout out to the team that has been working tirelessly in the back. Rishabh Agarwal, Maheshwari Shukla, Shweta Pal, Gaurav Guha, all of these guys who have worked tirelessly to make this event such a brilliant and such a memorable event. So, guys, a big shout out to all of you. Keep working and keep creating magic. Um, we have one more month left, guys. We are going to get through this. I hope 2021 brings us better things. I hope we'll all be able to meet in person very, very soon. And I wish you guys all the success and all the happiness and all the best for everything that's to come ahead. Thank you so much for taking out the time to be with us here today. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks.
Thanks,
It's
everyone.
been a pleasure. It's been a